Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming together to join in our immersion in this body of wisdom that's before us, both in the written text and in the text of the lives that are on screen. We are in Parshat Nitzavim-Vayeilech, a double portion. It begins in the book of Deuteronomy with chapter 29, verse 9. In just a moment, we'll read through the English translation of our portion. I'll share with you a focused study about it, and then we'll open it up for our collective collaborative conversation about it. If you'd like to go ahead and unmute at this time, feel free to do so and join in the recitation of the blessing, giving thanks for this moment. Baruch
Adonai
Eloheinu
melech haolam
asher
mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot
Torah. Thank you, God, for the opportunity to immerse ourselves in words, deeds, and relationships of Torah.
Here we go.
And we are in Book of Deuteronomy, chapter 29, verse 9. I'll share with you the opening verses, and then I'll invite others to have an opportunity to read as well. You stand this day, all of you, before Adonai your God, your tribal heads, your elders, and your officials, all the people of Israel, your children, wives, the stranger within your camp, wood chopper, the water drawer, to enter into the covenant of Adonai your God, which Adonai your God is concluding with you this day, with its sanctions, to the end that God may establish you this day as God's people and to be your God, as God promised you and swore to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I make this covenant with its sanctions, not with you alone, but both with those who are standing here with us this day before Adonai your God, and with those who are not with us here this day. Anna, would you like to continue a little bit at verse 15?
Thank you. Well, you know that we dwelt in the land of Egypt, and that we passed through the midst of various other nations through which you passed, and you have seen the detestable things and the fetishes of wood and stone, silver and gold that they keep. Perchance there is among you some man or woman, or some clan or tribe whose heart is even now turning away from our God, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, to go and worship the gods of those nations. Perchance there is among you a stalk sprouting poison weed and wormwood. When hearing the words of these sanctions, such a one may imagine a special immunity, thinking, I shall be safe, though I follow my own willful heart, to the utter ruin of moist and dry alike. Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh will never forgive such individuals. Rather, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh's anger and passion will rage against them, till every sanction recorded in this book comes down upon them, and Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh blots out their name from under heaven.
Thank you. Richard, would you like to read starting at verse 20?
Yes, thank you, Rabbi. The Lord will single them out from all of the tribes of Israel for misfortune, in accordance with all the sanctions of the covenant recorded in this book of teaching. And later generations will ask the children who succeed you and foreigners who come from distant lands and see the plagues and diseases that the Lord has inflicted upon that land, all its soil devastated by sulfur and salt, beyond sowing and producing, no grass growing in it, just like the upheaval of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboim, which the Lord overthrew in his fierce anger. All the nations will ask, why did the Lord do thus to this land? Wherefore that awful wrath? They will be told, because they forsook the covenant that the Lord God of their fathers made with them when he freed them from the land of Egypt. They turned to the surface of other gods and worshiped them, gods whom they had not experienced and whom he had not allowed to them. So the Lord was incensed at that land and brought upon it all the curses recorded in this book. The Lord uprooted them from their soil in anger, fury, and great wrath, and cast them into another land, as is still the case.
And that last verse
Yeah, I
there.
gotta get the page turned here. There it is. Concealed acts concern the Lord our God, but with overt acts, it is for us and our children ever to apply all the provisions of the teachings.
Thank you so much. Marco, would you like to read a little bit at the very start of chapter 30?
I think it's this 30 that is absolutely poetic, because I was reading ahead a little bit. When all those things befall you, the blessings and the curses that I have set before you, and you take them to heart amidst the various nations to which the Lord your God has brandished you, and you return to the Lord your God, you and your children, heed his command with all your heart and soul, just as I enjoin upon you this day. Then the Lord your God will restore your fortunes and take you back in love. He will bring you together again from all the peoples where the Lord your God has scattered you. Even if your outcasts are at the ends of the world, from there the Lord your God will gather you. From there he will fetch you. And the Lord your God will bring you to the land that your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it, and he will make you more prosperous and more numerous than your fathers.
Thank you so much. Kath, would you like to continue there at verse 6?
Yes, thank you, Rabbi. Then your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, will open up your heart and the hearts of your offspring to love your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, with all your heart and soul in order that you may live. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God, will inflict all those curses upon the enemies and foes who persecuted you. You, however, will again heed Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh and obey all the divine commandments that I enjoin upon you this day. And your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, will grant you abounding prosperity in all your undertakings, in the issue of your womb, the offspring of your cattle, and the produce of your soil. For Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh will again delight in your well-being as in that of your ancestors, since you will be heeding your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, and keeping the divine commandments and laws that are recorded in this book of the teaching, once you return to your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, with all your heart and soul.
Thank you, Kath. Marty, would you like to continue there, verse 11?
Yes, thank you, Rabbi. Surely this instruction which I enjoin upon you this day is not too baffling for you, nor is it beyond reach. It is not in the heavens that you should say, who among us can go up to the heavens and get it for us and impart it to us that we may observe it? Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, who among us can cross to the other side of the sea and get it for us and impart it to us that we may observe it? No, the thing is very close to you, in your mouth and in your heart to observe it. See, I set before you this day life and prosperity, death and adversity. For I command you this day to love the Lord your God, to walk in his ways and to keep his commandments, his laws and his rules, that you may thrive and increase, and that the Lord your God may bless you in the land that you are about to enter and possess. But if your heart turns away and you give no heed and are lured into the worship and service of other gods, I declare to you this day that you shall certainly perish. You shall not endure on the soil that you are crossing the Jordan to enter and possess. I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day. I have put before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life, if you and your offspring would live, by loving the Lord your God, heeding his commandments, and holding fast to him. For thereby you shall have life and shall long endure upon the soil that the Lord swore to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give to you.
Thank you so much. Justin, would you like to continue at the very start of chapter 31?
Thank you, Rabbi. And Moses went. He spoke the following words to all Israel. He said, "Today I am 120 years old. I can no longer go or come. And the Lord said to me, you shall not cross this Jordan. The Lord your God, he will cross before you. He will destroy these nations from before you so that you will possess them. Joshua, he will cross before you as the Lord has spoken. And the Lord will do to them as he did to the Amorite kings, Sihon and Og, and to their land, all of which he destroyed. And when the Lord delivers them before you, you shall do to them according to the commandment that I have commanded you. Be strong and courageous. Neither fear nor be dismayed of them, for the Lord your God, he is one who goes with you. He will neither fail you nor forsake you. And Moses called Joshua and said to him in the presence of all Israel, be strong and courageous, for you shall come with this people to the land which the Lord swore to their forefathers to give them, and you shall apportion to them as an inheritance. The Lord, he who is one, who goes before you, he will be with you. He will neither fail you nor forsake you. Do not fear and do not be dismayed.
Thank you, Justin. Catherine, would you like to continue reading at verse 9?
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi. Moses wrote down the teaching and gave it to us, to the priests, son of Levi, who carried the ark of the Lord's covenant, and to all the elders of Israel. And Moses instructed them as follows. Every 7th year, the year set for remission, at the Feast of Booths, when all Israel comes to appear before Adonai your God in the place that he will choose, you shall read this teaching aloud in the presence of all Israel. Gather the people, men, women, children, and the strangers in your communities, that they may hear and so learn to revere Adonai your God and to observe faithfully every word of this teaching. Their children too, who have not had the experience, shall hear and learn to revere Adonai your God as long as they live in the land that you are about to cross the Jordan to possess.
Thank you, Catherine. And Jay, would you like to read a little bit, starting at verse 14?
Thank you, Rabbi. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh said to Moses, the time is drawing near for you to die. Call Joshua and present yourselves in the tent of meeting, that I may instruct him.
Okay.
Moses and Joshua went and presented themselves in the tent of meeting. Can you hear me okay?
We were having some problems, but go ahead. I think it's okay.
The Lord appeared in the
Okay, I think we're having some buffering problems there, Jay. So let me ask Mark Thompson, if you could just start over there with verse 14, and then we'll get.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi. Adonai said to Moses,
pillar of cloud. The pillar of cloud.
can we ask him to mute?
Let me go void on the video first and see if that helps. Okay,
Jay, we're just gonna, we'll get back to you. Let me have Mark continue, starting with. verse.
no problem. I'm muted and
Thank you.
I'm out.
Adonai said to Moses, the time is drawing near for you to die. Call Joshua and present yourselves in the tent of meeting, that I may instruct him. Moses and Joshua went and presented themselves in the tent of meeting. Adonai appeared in the tent in a pillar of cloud, the pillar of cloud having come to rest at the entrance of the tent. Adonai said to Moses, "You are soon to lie with your fathers. This people will thereupon go astray after the alien gods in their midst, in the land that they are about to enter. They will forsake me and break my covenant that I made with them. Then my anger will flare up against them, and I will abandon them and hide my countenance from them. They shall be ready, prey, and many evils and troubles shall befall them. And they shall say on that day, surely it is because our God is not in our midst that these evils have befallen us. Yet I will keep my countenance hidden on that day because of all the evil they have done in turning to other gods. Therefore, write down this poem and teach it to the people of Israel. Put it in their mouths in order that this poem may be my witness against the people of Israel. When I bring them into the land flowing with milk and honey, that I promised on oath to their fathers, and they eat their fill and grow fat and turn to other gods and serve them, spurning me and breaking my covenant, and the many evils and troubles befall them, then this poem shall confront them as a witness, since it will never be lost from the mouth of their offspring. For I know what plans they are devising even now, before I bring them into the land that I promised on oath."
One more verse, please.
That day Moses wrote down this poem and taught it to the Israelites.
Thank you. And Robert, would you continue there, verse 23?
Yes, thank you. And he gave Joshua the son of Nun a charge and said, "Be strong and of good courage, for thou shalt bring the children of Israel into the land which I swear unto them, and I will be with thee." And it came to pass, when Moses had made an end of writing the words of this law in a book, until they were finished, that Moses commanded the Levites, which bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord, saying, "Take this book of the law and put it in the side of the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, that it may be there for a witness against thee. For I know thy rebellion and thy stiff neck. Behold, while I am yet alive with you this day, ye have been rebellious against the Lord, and how much more after my death? Gather unto me all the elders of your tribes and your officers, that I may speak these words in their ears, and call heaven and earth to record against them. For I know that after my death ye will utterly corrupt yourselves and turn aside from the way which I have commanded you, and evil will befall you in the latter days, because ye will do evil in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him in anger through the work of your hands. And Moses spake in the ears of all the congregation of Israel the words of this song until they were ended.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. That's our double portion for this week. If you have a copy of the study sheet, I invite you to take it out now. And this week's portion climaxes, as Robert has just read, with Moses about to sing a poem, a song, a shira. It may be translated either way. We'll get to the text of that song, that poem, in next week's portion. But what struck me was the fact that this bit of Torah, this book of Deuteronomy, is now climaxing with this final act by Moses of singing a song. And what I thought of was that this part of the journey that we call the 5 books of Moses, this part of the journey is concluding with song. And I remembered that, in a sense, the journey began in song also. And so that's what I have here on the study sheet in number 1, where right after the Israelites have overcome their first obstacle upon leaving the slavery of Egypt, and they've crossed over the Sea of Reeds, the Red Sea. The men sing and the women sing. And we have this verse here. Moses and the Israelites sang this song, Shirah, to Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. And then a few verses later, and Miriam called out to them, the women, Shiru, sing to Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. And then we have this verse that Robert has just read. Then Moses recited into the ears of the whole community of Israel the words of this song, this Shirah. So the journey of the Israelites is bookended in a sense by song. The beginning of the journey in which the song is there to celebrate and to give thanks and to look forward to the future. And here, the song that we'll read the text of, that Moses is now concluding this portion of the journey with. So the notion that these high points are shift from that of mere prose and to that of song, that of poetry, I think is worth spending some time exploring, as have many of our commentators. And that is what I have here in number 2, which is a quote from a rabbi known as the Nitziv, which is an acronym for the name Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, who was an Orthodox Lithuanian rabbi who was the head of a yeshiva there. He lived from about 1816 to about 1893. And he wrote this: there is a distinction between poetry and prose. In poetry, the subject matter is not plainly set forth as it is in prose. Additional explanations are necessary in order to indicate the allusions condensed into each expression. Such is the nature of Torah. Its story is not elaborated. It requires additional explanations in order to appreciate its allusions. So the Nitziv is pointing out that not merely these sections that we've highlighted in our number 1 on our study sheet are poems or songs, but perhaps the whole of Torah may be viewed as poetry rather than a more journalistic, straightforward, declarative prose type of discourse. And the nature of poetry and its capacity to disturb what we think we know these words to mean is captured here by the great late 20th century poet Adrian Rich, who wrote, "Poetry can break open locked chambers of possibility, restore numbed zones to feeling, recharge desire." You know, it's interesting, first of all, that the Nitziv wrote what he wrote about the value of poetry, because one of the things that he's known for is he resisted pressures to include in his yeshiva the teachings of any secular subject. He vowed he would rather shut down his school rather than have to teach these other subjects that the members of the Jewish Enlightenment were insisting that he include as part of the curriculum. And yet he recognizes that there is something about poetry that is so compelling as a form of discourse that helps us get to a deeper meaning. And of course, Adrian Rich, when she talks about breaking open locked chambers of possibility, recharging desire, her own life was one that was full of overcoming obstacles to become recognized as a poet in a world that was dominated by men, and overcoming a lot of the pressures of her own, dealing with her own sexuality. You know, her family had already anticipated that she would be born as a boy, and they had picked out the name Arnold for her. And it took some time for her to eventually, in the course of her life, to come out as a lesbian. So this notion about breaking open, this was not just something that she was writing about, but the breaking open of locked chambers of possibility was something that she was also living through her life as an act of poetry. And then if you turn over the study sheet, I'd like to share with you what a really fascinating French rabbi, Marc-Alain Joachim, wrote in a wonderful book called Mysteries of the Kabbalah. He wrote, "Reality is not static and does not consist of eternal essences that can be understood by means of fixed concepts. It is the constantly unfolding future of life which bursts forth and renews itself. One cannot thus perceive reality unless it is by using a language and images that are constantly in motion. Poetry seeks to restore vibration to words whose life has become motionless." So this power of poetry, of song, to revibrate words which have become still, not because of their essences, but because of our relationship with these words. We think we know what they mean, and so they have lost some of their vitality. And so a different kind of discourse needs to enter into the literature in order to revibrate them, revive them, restore their resonance as sources of profound meaning and life that spill forth from the universe. And Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, one of the great rabbis of the late 20th century, said this: "Judaism is a religion of words, and yet whenever the language of Judaism aspires to the spiritual, it breaks into song, as if the words themselves sought to escape from the gravitational pull of finite meanings." And then Rabbi Aryeh Bernstein, who is a contemporary Jewish contemporary rabbi, I believe he's associated with the organization Avodah, wrote this in a lovely article: "Torah is Torah when we perceive the enigmas in its language. When we ride those flying shards, each one gesturing toward the fleeting memory of the divine word, not capturing the divine word, only continually unpacking its suggestive meaning." And with that, I'd like to point out something that I noticed in reading this portion carefully and listening to the reading of it. As you recall, in number 1, I captured the verse from our portion. "Then Moses recited into the ears of the whole community of Israel the words of this song." And yet before that, several verses before that, something interesting happens. Up till now, the entire book of Deuteronomy, it has been Moses who has been speaking. Moses has been retelling the story, been reminding the people of Israel about their various responsibilities and the instructions that have been passed along to God. But here in our portion at chapter 31, verse 19, God's own voice now intervenes and God's voice is now spoken through our verses. And that divine voice says to Moses, "Write down this song, this Shirah, teach it to the people of Israel, put it in their mouths." Unlike Moses, where the narrative says Moses recited this into the ears, the instruction from God is take this song and put it in their mouths. Why into their mouths? I think the difference there is they were to be put into their mouths so that they would then sing the song, not merely hear the song. In other words, they would become singers of this song, not merely audiophiles, if you will, not merely lovers of what they were hearing, but they would become part of the chorus and perhaps even they would become all individual soloists singing this song. So with that, I'd like to take a look at the painting that is on the front by the Mexican painter Rene Serrano Rodriguez, who painted this piece that he titled Redemption Song. And actually, I picked it first because of the title, Redemption Song, which we'll get to in a moment, because it's saying something about songs. But then I studied the painting more carefully this week, and I saw things in it. What I saw was in the center, I saw some kind of powerful, radiant energy there at the center. And there, articulating outward from that radiance, are these tendrils, as if they are coming forth from the center, seeking out some way to attach itself, some way to grow and attach itself, and become roots of life, or extend itself further outward into the universe. And then at the top of the painting, there is that line of blue. And what I saw there was, well, maybe that's the borderline. And on the other side, that greenery is the promised land. So this, for me, the painting represented the effusion of life. It's reaching out, and perhaps there in the verdant top of the painting is the promise and the hope that the life will continue to grow and extend itself out and cross the border and into the promise, just as the Israelites are about to do. So it is something about the nature of artists of all kinds, which I think is not merely to express what it is that they have encountered on their own journey, but I think there's a desire on the part of great artists that those who encounter their works will, in a sense, take up where they have left off, whether it's on a canvas, in a dance, whether it is on a stage, whether it is with a piece of music, that who is ever viewing it, watching it, listening to it, will, in a sense, become part of the artistic journey that the artist as explorer has opened up for us. So here, the painting is called a Redemption Song. And I don't know why Rene Serrano Rodriguez called his piece Redemption Song, but what it did evoke for me, just as reading this week's Torah portion, the conclusion of it evoked for me the beginning of the journey, his title of his painting evoked for me the song by the great songwriter and singer Bob Marley, his piece, Redemption Song, which on the surface is a piece of history. He's talking about a social reality. It's a song about slavery, about being taken and captured, and then resisting the slavery, and then overcoming the slavery. And it's also perhaps a very personal piece for Bob Marley. It's a piece that he wrote shortly after he'd been diagnosed with cancer, which he eventually died from. And unlike many of his song tracks, which are with a full band behind him, Redemption Song is a piece that was recorded as an acoustic piece with just him playing his guitar and singing solo. And so perhaps he's also exposing himself as a vulnerable person and saying, I'm on this journey too. I'm not just writing about something that happens outside in the world. I'm writing about this journey that threatens to constrain me and end me. But if I sing my song, perhaps I can overcome the sense of constraint that the external reality seeks to impose upon me internally. And here is the chorus to the song. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? Because all I ever had, redemption songs, all I ever had redemption songs, these songs of freedom, songs of freedom. Bob Marley is saying something about the book, which he doesn't say what the book is, but it is obviously something profound, something perhaps even sacred, something that tells the story. And he says the way to fulfill the book is to sing the songs of freedom, because that is what redemption is all about. That is what will achieve redemption. That is what will fulfill the journey from slavery to freedom, to sing the song, to be a participant in it. And I want to suggest that that is what the divine voice in this Torah portion is saying, is that you can't merely be a passive listener to the story. You have to sing the story. You have to live the story. You have to be a participant in the story. That's the way to fulfill the book. So with that, I'd love to hear what you encountered, what you experienced, saw in the course of studying the portion and reading it together. Let me call upon Kath and then Marty and Jay. So Kath.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Yeah.
This one, it's just so powerful. And I love that this is where Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh is actually making that shift to communicating directly. One of the things, and I think we talked about this last week after this part was over, but thinking about the different types of performing arts or visual arts. With art, the artist draws and then people see it. And with a book, if it's just a reading book, the writer writes and people read it. But there are two forms that need a third piece, which is in music. Generally, the composer has written the music on paper, but it's silent. And the only way that it is completed is if the musicians play it or the singer sings it. And the same with a playwright, same thing, written on paper, but the actors need to voice the sound. And so I just think that added piece is so powerful. And I also think about when we're learning, lots of times, first we think a thought, for example, and then we'll hear a thought but it's when we then say it out loud is when it really comes alive. So there's just so much power in this one, but I think a lot of it is tied in with that. The physical action of voicing something is a form of commitment. I mean, by saying it and by making it out loud, we are then responsible for what's come out of us. And sometimes there are ramifications from that are good. And sometimes they are very powerful, can cause death, can cause all sorts of things. It's the power of the word. And I think there's one, it's life and death. It's with the tongue. Life and death are in the power of the tongue. And I think that really applies to this.
Thank you. You know, here's one thing that you got me to think about, Kath, in terms of different art forms. I started thinking about dance while you were speaking. And in the back here, let me see if I can. Let me just bring it to you. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so this is a painting by an artist named Abraham Wolkowitz, and it is a piece of the dancer Isadora Duncan. And Isadora Duncan was someone that Wolkowitz met in the art studio of Auguste Rodin. And Isadora Duncan is considered to be the founder of modern dance. And what she did was totally evocative of what Adrienne Rich writes about, where she says, poetry can break open locked chambers of possibility, restore numb zones to feeling, recharge desire. What Isadora Duncan did was she freed herself and thereby dancers to come after her, literally from the constraint of ballet. She took off the corsets and the constraining garments and forsook all the rigid, confining movements of ballet, which required extreme devotion and discipline to perform, and which very few people could do. But so what Isadora Duncan did was she put on flowing clothes, which you can see here in this piece, and she moved in a way that, in a sense, invited all of us to consider that, I could move that way. I might not be able to perform a plie or a leap of a certain kind, or all the ways in which ballet contorts the body, but I can move in a way that is about freedom. And so I love the notion about the fact that she broke through the literal constraints of ballet and gave something that said to all of us, this is your movement. I invite you to participate as well. Sing this song, if you will. So thank you, Kath, for that.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I totally ignored the dance part. So I'm really grateful for that. Thanks, Rabbi.
Thank you. Let me invite Marty, Jay, and then Catherine. So Marty, yeah.
So in this Parsha, we have all the Israelites gathered together on the east side of the Jordan, preparing to enter the promised land. And they are completely unified. There's no one left in Egypt, and they are all together. They're completely unified. So I found an anomaly in this portion, because in paragraph 30, line 4, it says, even if your outcasts are at the end of the world, from there the Lord your God will gather you. From there he will fetch you. And it goes on. And it doesn't seem to make sense, because they're all together. So why would it say it there? And I think the answer, of course, some scholars have speculated that Deuteronomy is a later book that was added centuries after the original writings. And it's very appropriate then, but not now. So this actually supports the notion that the book is a later book, and it's writing about events that will come. That's all.
Thank you, Marty. And these things do come, and whether it is a social political reality or a psychological and spiritual reality, this kind of being outcast, detached, and dispossessed happen in life, and the question is, how are we able to overcome that sense of dispossession? How are we able to overcome that sense of reunification and this powerful message that there is a presence that is ever with us, if we can attune ourselves to it and move through and reconnect. So I just thank you very much for that recognition about both the historical perspective on this book and also perhaps also an underlying message as well. Let me call Jay. Did you want to share with us?
If I don't get buffered out,
Jay, we're having some problems with the.
am I okay?
Yeah.
No, we're having some problems with your audio.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Okay, thank you. Let me call upon Catherine.
Yeah, it's hard not to be kind of heartbroken by this parsha, not just because Moses is preparing to die, but because we begin with this story of forgiveness, of the way that people can make amends and be welcomed back into the fold. And we end with this story of how once Moses leaves, people are bound to commit these misdeeds again, and that we anticipate some form of punishment in return for that. And that sort of brought out to me how the leadership, that it underscores the difference in the kind of leadership that Moses can give and that of Joshua. That it's categorically different kind of leadership, and that it is that it just really brings out into the open the importance of the memory of Moses through the song. So that's what I sort of got from the Parshat.
I was thinking about Moses this week when I was responding to a question I got in the mail about something in particular. I started reflecting on the Haggadah and how Moses is not even mentioned in Haggadah.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to think about, what does that mean if the story about the liberation from Egypt elides any reference to the one that presumably was leading us along the way? I'm taken by your sense of tragedy here. Yeah, because and part of that tragedy is what I highlighted in picking out the two verses about the teaching of the song, that God says, put it in their mouths. And yet when it comes to Moses actually teaching that, he puts it into their ears. And it reminded me of the incident at the rock where God said, speak to the rock. And instead Moses hits the rock. It's like this notion of this profound tragic figure of Moses, who never quite seemed to find his place. I mean, that's he grows up in the palace, but finally he separates from there, and he is returned into the fold of the Israelites, but there's a lot of tension between him and the Israelites. And he's a very tragic figure in a lot of ways. And his name itself seems to belie this sense of lack of settlement and clarity, because while some rabbinic tradition tries to explain Moses as meaning drawn from the water, it's what scholars tell us it's really an Egyptian name meaning son of. And so there is, it's a very tragic figure, and I think in a sense captures that sense in which all of us are kind of going back and forth between roles of clarity, and we know who we are and what we're supposed to be doing, and then moments of feeling not quite fitting in and being confused about our role and so forth. And so I want to thank you for kind of pointing out that tragic component of what we've just read. Thank you, Ken. Let me call upon Richard here.
Yeah, the notion that about Moses, tonight I feel that this whole book is a song. And the thing about singing, how many of you went to camp and learned some songs that are still buried in there and give voice to them? And the next chapter is the song, and Rabbi's notion of the words that were given here to put in our mouth, they all have different meanings. And it's about exciting our emotions to, and I think what we're being told here, one, this is not historical. This is a mythology, in my view. And there's something said about they were all together at one time. Why are they not all together? Why are they being dispersed? Well, this is Israel, and it's one consciousness, and there's one God. And this tribe, our people, are the people that connect with. Remember when Jacob sees Esau and he says, it's like seeing God. Treat everybody as yourself, not like yourself. And getting that inside and put it in his ear, in their ear, and they'll hear it. And what it says, it gives an antidote. The antidote is a song. The antidote is assurance that once this is in your ear and then you hear this song, it'll be in there, and somehow it will be given to your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren through the generations, and you'll all be scattered around, but you're all together, not in a nation that's the conundrum or the ambiguity of the state of Israel. And Esau, I always worry he's not getting in his water, but that this is the message of Torah, that here is a religion or a relationship with something that's beyond time, beyond what we think of as reality, that's being given, and will come back in generations. It's going to come back. There's going to be kids that pick it up and carry it on, carry it on, carry it on. And what he says in chapter 29, concealed acts are the concern of God. But what's done in public, you're all going to be responsible for. I'm not getting on people's case for what the sin is inside going on. Carry on, live decently, and care and love, and keep this song alive, because the song is going to cure this through the generations as you're in diaspora. Now, that's just one way to look at it, but that's how I look at this whole book, as a song, rather than as a book, a novel about some characters and what they did or didn't do, and what they're like and what they're not like. This is something to digest. And lastly, is the story that Ginsburg quotes in Legends of the Jews about Moses went up to the mountain, and God had dug the hole for him, going to put him in it. He refuses to go there. I'm not laying down. These are my people. I'm going to lead them. And then his soul, she, that's what it says in the book, she let him know that she made a deal with God, and that she would continue to lead the people through history. And he said, cool, and he laid down. And that's what we've been given. This, and I won't go on about Isadora Duncan. I'll say that another time. But that's my take on it.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. And let's see, Jay, let's see if your audio is working better. Yeah, go ahead.
Technology. Better?
Yes.
All right. The tiny little iPhone instead of the big iPad. I am intrigued by a few things. One is that this is the first part of the Tanakh where they use the word book. Here's a book. In fact, first God says, tell the people to say these words, and now God says, write this down and put this in a book, and have the Levites carry this book with them. And with regards to the song of redemption, this painting, once again, I enlarged it on the big screen and then rotated it several times, because I never know if the artist really wanted to be hung by that wire that way or upside down. So what I hear in Psalms is that the Jordan rejoices and skipped, and you hear these inanimate things singing and dancing. And here, if you look at it from its normal orientation, the center red appears to be the very, very substantial trunk of a tree. And exactly following the lines up, you will see the branches reaching up through the ethos and then into the blue, and then the exact same leaves and blossoms up above in the green. And it's drawing from its roots below, and you can follow these lines down to the sources within the earth. It's getting its nutrients and its inspiration from these very same colors. There's a lot of colors that are reminiscent of Vincent van Gogh here. I don't know, just the colors, this is several hundred years later. But then if you turn it over, you're going to see the same juxtaposition of a tree, but then the tree is drawing itself from the underwater aquifer and whatever lies within, and the branches are these segments of the blue and green. I think that all the other things are the children of Israel standing around and saying, wow, what's happened? What's going on? And they're singing the song of redemption.
Thank you, Jay. That to be able to draw, to be able to reorient a work of art is I think a fair form of interpretation, and to be able to draw some different meaning out of it. And what you've done there, I think, is quite lovely. It reminds me of the notion of in Kabbalah, the tree of life is having its roots up in heaven and its branches coming down into this dimension. So that was very, very, very lovely. Thank you so much. And as a way to perhaps draw our time together, I reflected on, while I was studying the portion, how much we spend on the notion of Shema, of hear, to listen throughout our Torah, the importance of that, and not just merely as a way of intaking some auditory experience, but also meaning that you're supposed to hear it, you're supposed to reflect upon it, you're supposed to interpret it, and then you're supposed to express it. You're supposed to creatively act upon what you've heard. And yet here at the end, the divine voice's emphasis seems to be on not merely hearing, but the importance of singing, and that we are to be vocalizers of this encounter and this experience. And thereby we are, in a sense, become co-creators of this divine encounter. And I just want to thank each and every one of you for creating the kind of community that, with respect and with integrity and with creative interpretation, hear what this text has to say, and then also become interpretive vocalizers of the text. Each one of you has heard something slightly different. And I think that is what Rabbi Aryeh Bernstein means when he says, we ride those flowing shards, each one gesturing toward the fleeting memory of the divine word. Each one of us has encountered some aspect of the infinite, and in our finite ways, we try to sing to one another what we've encountered. And when we hear one another, when we attend to one another, what a beautiful chorus we have the capacity to create. So I want to thank each and every one of you for being a beautiful chorus, and look forward to our regathering next time. Be well, everyone. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.